You are now listening to the Dust Jet Podcast.
Mom. That's how you're supposed to feel about your mom. So that's all good. It's all good. It's all good. We can move on to something else. Now, you know your mom, she's been watching you guys for a long time and she's proud of y'all. If we proud of y'all, you know your mom is proud of y'all because she had it hard as a young girl all the way up until, you know, she was taken home early. So she's very proud of you guys. You guys definitely give her a reason to feel like nothing, you guys, her bringing you guys into this world, none of that was in vain. She did good. So,
Well, look, hold on. This is what I was going to say. When I pick my kids up, to like put them to bed, it just takes me back to that place.
To that moment. That's a good memory, Jeffrey, for real. It's a real good memory. And the fact that every time you pick them up to put them to bed at night, it reminds you of that. If that's the only memory that you ever had, that's a good one.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, it's like I had a milestone in my mind, like when I was younger. I just wanted to make it to see my kids be 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like at least 6.
Yeah.
You
How
know,
old is little Harlem now? She's
she's 5.
4?
She just turned
Wow.
5. Yeah, but yeah, it was just like it was like a milestone to me mentally,
Mhm.
because I don't know what it's like to make it to 6. With both your
With your mom.
parents. Yeah,
Yeah. But for you to remember that moment, that nurturing moment of your mother, that's priceless, and for you to correlate that to when you are getting your girls ready for bed, you're picking them up, you're putting them in the bed, and that comes to you. I mean, that's just a memory. That's a memory that's going to always be with you. Very well, even be her. I think she's always going to be there with you guys.
yeah.
She's always going to be there.
Well, one of my motivations is ever since I was a kid was, how they say people watch you, people look down on you. I always wanted her to be like proud when I do see her again, or if and when. And yeah, so I've always tried to. Well, my number one thing is I never wanted to go to jail. Uh,
Mhm.
So if nothing else, because most people in our family, they've been to jail or prison or whatever the case may be. So I just wanted to be a good person in life. So you know.
So, how do you feel about that? Do you think that you have accomplished that up until this point of just being a good person, a good citizen, trying to, you know, stay away from the stigma of being, a black man in America? You
Yeah.
know, I
Uh,
definitely can second that.
yeah. I think so. It's
Yeah,
like I'm not a bad individual. I don't have
no,
a
not at all.
a mean or bad spirit. So yeah, I think so. And then when I factor in, like things that she's been through in her life,
Mm.
uh, I think yeah, I think I did pretty well. Even though I mean I'm not a doctor or a lawyer, but yeah, I think I've been did it okay for the circumstances.
I think we can say that because honestly, my aunt, your mom, she was made a statistic. It wasn't by choice. She was made that way. However, people in our family and those on the outside that knows, our family or knew her, however they want to look at it, that's the truth. I
Yeah,
think that's what makes our generation a little bit different from that earlier generation or my mom's generation is our generation more so we tell the truth. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
and that's just the truth of the matter. We tell the truth. This is what it is. And I think what, you know, separates us from them is the fact that we choose to do something different. There's absolutely no way that we're going to allow what happened in that time in our homes around our children if we can absolutely avoid that. Um, and I think that as long as we continue to break those barriers going forward, our kids will be straight. You know what I'm saying? Because you disciplined yourself, as a young boy without a mom coming up to be someone that says, I'm not going to go to jail. A lot of these kids these days don't even think like that. Their mindset is I'm going to jail or I'm going to be dead. You know what I'm saying? Um, I told myself, I'm going to school. Come hell to high water, I'm going to school and I'm going to figure it out from there, you know. And right before graduating high school, I lost my mom, you know. Um, so then having to stay with family and then you are raised by family. There is nothing like being raised by your mom, being raised by your parents. It's a totally different upbringing in a lot of cases, not all, but in a lot of situations it's totally different when you're not raised by your mom and your dad
right,
or both.
right,
It's just crazy. So
yeah. And see, I want to like give this as insight, right? Like
mm,
I ain't no lie, I was really lost for several years. Maybe about 7 or 8 years. Um, like I think I was so hurt for the longest.
yeah.
It was like why? I couldn't figure out why for the
Mm,
longest. Cause I'm like, man, it's worse people in the world that's doing worse things. It's like, why mine? You know?
absolutely.
And then I didn't believe in God or nothing that like I stopped all that. And
Because of
then
this situation,
yeah,
because of the adversity, the wondering of why.
yeah. Like,
Mm,
yeah,
it's usually how it happens. You ain't the only
yeah.
one.
And then I'm one of them people where I try to make peace, with a situation like before I can move on. And I think when I was like 12 or 13, I mean, when I got to 12 or 13, I just kind of realized maybe this happened to get us out of Kansas City and get us into a better situation, because, it was drugs involved. And
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why I don't have a lot of memories is because I don't think she was at home a lot, you know. It's
Hmm.
like because most of my memories was my oldest brother. He was always watching us or, taking care of us or, watching over us, fixing us something to eat, whatever. Um he he was really like a father figure for me at a young age. So that's who I remember the most doing
Hmm.
stuff. But I kind of made that peace where I just felt like that was the reason why was to get us out of Kansas City. And I can't even say it's not the best. It wasn't the best situation, but it
Mhm.
was a little better than where we were. I mean, you got one woman raising five boys.
Mhm.
And you got uh drugs get involved, and all that. It's just not a healthy situation. And
It wasn't.
yeah, and then when you look at my two oldest brothers that stayed in Kansas City, you know, you kind of see the path that they went down. They went down the rough road.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, it was not saying that we didn't, but theirs was rougher than ours. They had to find their own way, to my knowledge.
Well, I mean, I look at that a little different because I know we've had this conversation before, and I know you probably had this conversation with Aaron before as well. Like when we say to you, because we all were kind of around the same age. I'm just a year or two older than you, or whatever. Even though the situation or where you guys landed may have not been ideal, at least you were with your biological father. And who is to say what would have happened in y'all's lives if y'all would have stayed here in Kansas City? Who's to say? From, me looking at your two older siblings, they were blessed to stay with grandma. Grandma always had a nice home. She nice cars, food in the house, utilities on, no disconnects, nice schools, nice neighborhoods. I think that the choices was what the outcome is. Of course, you know, they're doing a little bit better, or one of them is doing better. Um, and the other one, he's getting ready to come home. They made those choices because I feel like their situation was better than a lot of ours. You know, they made the choice to do the stuff that they did because it wasn't like they was, coming up in the hood and all that stuff like that. None of that happened from me being, you know, a cousin watching the situation. And at one point in time, one of them, well, both of them lived with my mom, you know. And that still was an ideal situation. I don't, so I definitely would say it was a choice for
Yeah.
real.
Well, I'm a firm believer in this. I feel like a lot of people let their background or their family history kind of define them. Like if you look at a lot of people that sold drugs, like back in the day, their kids end up selling drugs, or somebody goes to
Mhm.
prison, their kid end up goes to prison. Um, I am a firm believer in that whatever you've been through in your life or what your parents went through, that doesn't define you. So yeah, I agree with you there that you got to make your own choices. And I had this talk with Calvin,
Mhm.
my second oldest brother. Um, I'm not sure if it was the first time he was locked up or the second, but he used to always say, man, y'all had it a lot easier than we did. And I'm like, dude, it wasn't that easy. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, we just chose to do better. Like I'm like, if I wanted to let my family history and background define me, I could have did that. I was
Right.
around people all the time who sold drugs or whatever. Like that's what people do where I'm from. Like a lot of people sell drugs. Like I could have done that. I almost did on a couple different occasions. Like I'm with the people doing it. I just chose not to. I'm with the people getting drunk, getting high, at a young age. Like I'm around them.
Yeah.
So it's like I could have went down that road
Yeah.
if I wanted to. But I wanted to kind of do my own thing. And as I said, I wanted to make my mama proud one day. Cause like I tell Denise all the time, it's like almost every dude in our family on that side of the family is almost every dude done been to prison. Almost everyone.
They
Like,
did stints in prison.
yeah,
Anything over 30 days to me is too long. Anything over a day in jail is too long for me, you know. I mean, just speaking of Calvin, I definitely I feel like what he said to you in that sense, from my experience with Calvin coming up, is peer pressure. Because, you know, I don't know how it was like growing up in the countryside. I know the city, you know what I'm saying?
hmm,
Um my mom took us from the country and brought us to the city. You know what I'm saying? So I'm thinking maybe he's saying that the peer pressure here was a lot, but then too, it still falls back on choices. Because, like you said, I could have done all of that. I made the choice to be a better person because I wanted to make my mom proud. You know, so in that essence, you chose to be a leader. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, even though we don't, you know, Calvin and his, you know, his masculinity and, you know, who he is as a person, you know, are you in that space? Were you being a leader or were you being a follower? You know, he's a older man now and he's in his 40s. That's something that if he sits down one day and thinks about, he would need to answer that. Because in my
yeah,
eyes, I don't see that being a leader, because you've spent most of your time being confined behind bars. You fell completely behind that stigma of what happens to a lot of black men in America.
yeah, yeah. I came to realize, maybe my teenage years, I'm just like I'm a walking statistic, and it's like
Hmm.
the crazy thing. It made me wanna, I say, challenge the statistic. Just like people assume that I smoke weed. I don't smoke weed. Well, I did at one point, but I quit.
Good.
But yeah, people would assume that. People would assume that I drink. I don't really drink. Not enough to say that I drink it all. People would assume that I got kids or baby mama, you know, uh, that I've been to jail, and I always wanted to kind of challenge those statistics. And just like I'm cool with a lot of people that's been to prison and or that are felons and stuff. And I've gotten asked before, like why do you kind of like gravitate to those people? And it's like, because that's supposed to be me, like statistically, that's supposed to be me. So I can't look at somebody differently because they're a felon or whatever the case may be, because per the statistics, that's I'm supposed to be that felon. I'm
Yeah,
supposed to be out here smoking weed, drinking, whatever. And yeah, I just always wanted to kind of, defy those
that's true.
statistics.
That's true. Basically, how life started for y'all, that's what it was supposed to be. That's what it that's what the world says is supposed to be. That's what society says. And fast forward down the line, you done been to college. You're a husband and a father.
And I don't smoke weed or drink.
And you don't smoke weed and you don't drink. Well, you know I don't. So
Yeah. And I never been to jail. That's the biggest thing. Yeah.
I've been in jail.
Man.
But I ain't going back.
Well, I got close once, but I was like 10, and I never made it to the cell. I made it to the police station, but I
Yeah.
never made it to the cell. So yeah, you know.
Yeah. It's definitely not a place for everybody. It's
Yeah,
not.
yeah. But another thing that I want to kind of get some insight on is, I don't know about you, but for me, I kind of wasn't good with dealing with my emotions after, and for a long time after. Like, I think probably now is like the most I've ever been able to deal with it in my life. And sometimes I hate it. You know what I mean? Because I remember my brother Dorian, he was like, he told me one day, he was like, man, I used to think you didn't care about nothing. And I was like, I really didn't, like I really didn't. But as we got older, he was like, you so much different. And it's like, it's cool, but I don't like it at the same time because that's not what I'm used to. I'm used to kind of being cold.
Maybe this is who you're supposed to be. Maybe you are this person that is, you should be able to have emotions. You should be able to express yourself. Just, you know, I'll tell you this, I was the same way. I didn't care about nothing. I didn't. Um I didn't start to have compassion for things in life um until I had my first child.
Right.
I didn't care about anything. I mean, let's be real here. We had relatives that I didn't even care about them. I didn't even think they cared about me. Our relationship with our grandmother. I didn't think she liked me. I didn't like her. You know what I'm saying? So, and I remember her telling me one day it was something that happened. And she said to me, Jeffrey, she was like, "You care. Yes, you do." I looked at her. I said, "No, I don't." Like, I don't care. I was dead serious. I mean, you want me to care, but girl, I don't care. You need to let it go. You know what I'm saying? You are looking for a moment to break me or whatever that moment is for you, or I don't know, but I don't care. Just because you might care, I don't. You know what I mean? So, um, I think that it's better now than never for us to be okay with being emotional. It is a horrible place to be when you are vulnerable. I hate being vulnerable because I'm supposed to figure it out. I'm supposed to be able to execute my plan because this is our mode of survival. This is how we've grown up. You know what I'm saying? You ain't got no money. We hustling trying to get some, right? You know what I'm
Uh,
saying? I mean, let's not talk about breakups. I mean, it is what it is. It happened. It must not might not meant been meant to be. So these days I care a little more.
yeah,
I care about
stuff.
humanity and
Yeah, yeah,
stuff. And it's like, you know, you don't want to care, but I mean, I don't know.
yeah,
It's better to do it now than ever. God didn't intend for us to be alone. He
yeah.
intended for us to have people to connect with. He did.
I'm with you. I agree with you. Now, this is some, and keep in mind, I'm hoping this gives somebody, because I don't really do this with people. Like if you got a question, I can answer it, but I don't like going too far into detail because it kind of opens me up, and I hate that. But I do want people to take something from this, and one of the things, well, it's a couple of things that I want people to take from it is if your child, and see, this is the frustrating part, that kind of
Mhm.
helps you get past the emotional part. If your child goes through a traumatic experience, get that child counseling.
I
You
agree.
know, it's a lot of people where they child goes through something and they neglect that you need to kind of stop what you're doing and give your child some counseling. I don't care if one of their parents just went to jail for 3 days. That's a traumatic experience.
Hmm.
And it's like I feel like, especially in the Black community, we don't really consider counseling as an option. Like I've told Denise, and I'm sure this has something to do with where I come from. I'm like, look, if something happens to me, give my baby some counseling
Hmm.
because they love their daddy, they love their mama. She said she agreed. She said the same thing. If something happens to her, get them some counseling. Because you don't want your kid out here trying to find their own way. Especially if they're younger. Now if you even I think even if a child is grown, well, I'm gonna say even if you're grown, like you're in your 20s, your 30s, you lose a parent, that person needs counseling.
Yeah.
because some people, you know, they lose it, you know, because they don't know what that's like, you
Mhm.
know. So that's something that I do want people to take from that is get your kid, or even if you're adult, get that person some counseling.
It don't even
Also,
have to be a death. It could be, the absence.
yeah, yeah,
Parents, break up every day. There's, two-person households. That affects these kids,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. I
The
agree with
energy that parents feel in those situations, that
you.
bleeds off onto the kid.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody is, emotionally uncharged. You know what I'm saying? In those moments, and it affects the entire household. Counseling is very necessary.
yeah, yeah. And see, and you're right. Like even if somebody had a parent, you know, as you know, a lot of people don't have their father in their life. Get that kid some counseling, you know,
Mhm. I
because you
agree.
know, I mean, instead of him turning, because it's like it's hard to deal with all that bottled up emotion. So
Yeah.
you know, kind of like my homeboy mama said this one time, so years ago. My homeboy who used to wrestle with his mom and stuff. She was like, "Look, you don't know what people are going through." You know, she was like, "It's somebody that's out here that got a lot of built up aggression, or you
Mhm.
know, a lot of just built up emotions, and they gonna lash out one day, and they might really hurt somebody."
Absolutely.
You know, so it's like let that person go to counseling, to vent, or you know, get some suggestions instead of letting them deal with it on their own. And I felt like that's what happened with all of us. You know, even though this is back in 1990, we had to find our own way. You know, and I'm sure we all
Find
probably,
our own way and
yeah,
raise ourselves. Don't forget that part. We had to raise ourselves.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah.